Good evening everyone and welcome to Sim Racing Online. My name is Neil Wood and I'm going to be taking you through 60 minutes of racing around Mosport, funnily known as the Canadian Motorsports Park, or Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. It's a bit more of a mouthful than Mosport, but we are at the 5th round of the Formula 1 1967 Championship. The championship is hotting up, absolutely hotting up. We have had some classic rounds in this championship so far. So we started off at Mount Panorama 1967, which was an absolute corker of a Grand Prix. Now if you know Mount Panorama, you'll know that the 1967 version of it doesn't have the chicane after the Conrod Straight, so it goes straight down into the last turn. That proved quite difficult. The mountain section proved quite difficult for our drivers, but we stayed in Australia for the second round for Longford, 1967 track, and again we headed over to France for round 3 for Clermont-Ferrand, the 1965 layout of a circuit known as Charade. And then last time out we headed to Fuji 1968. Drivers had to contend with a banked turn 1, a flat out banked turn 1. High attrition rate there. We started off with about 11 to 12 drivers and we only ended up with 6 finishers due to either accidents or engine failures. So we are coming down to the wire. Mosport Park is today, and in a week's time we'll be going to Watkins Glen 1965. So we've left the 2 shortest and tightest circuits till last. So this is going to be very interesting for our drivers to try and compete around these classic 1960s tracks that these cars would have actually driven on. So if we have a look at our season standings or championship so far, you'll see that Maddie Shepherd tops the table, but it's not for having a bad round last time out. Only scoring 4 points. We are using the classic point system, which is 9, 6, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So only the first 6 point finishers will grab themselves some points. So points are hard to come by. So Maddie Shepherd does top the table, but only by 10 points. And I've done my maths. Costas Kanzouras does have to win the final 2 rounds, and what Maddie Shepherd has to do is get 2 third places. So we keep an eye on that throughout this Grand Prix, and I'll maybe do some predictions. But the points further down the table are all to play for. We've got Michael Masaryk in 3rd there with 16 points. Then the battle further back, Julian Pors in 4th on 11, and Jim Cavallo in 5th on 6. Lars Hagman in 6th on 5. Then we've got Tony Talviti in 7th on 3. Bjorn Hagman in 8th on 3. Philip Pichler in 9th with 2. And level with Romain Labro in 10th with 2. So championship hotting up, and it could all change hands tonight. It could all get finished tonight in terms of the top points scorer. But we do have a little bit of a sting in the tail as well. It is a little bit of a wet Grand Prix, kind of simulating what happened in the real 1967 Grand Prix. So it's going to be a little bit wet. Our drivers haven't had wet weather in the Grand Prix so far, so they're going to have to deal with that. So if you haven't been with us before, we are using the 1967 cars. The 1967 cars we do have 2 Brabhams. We've got BT24 and the BT11 available to our drivers. We've got the Brabham, the P83. Then we have the Cooper T79 and the T81. So you might see a couple of different Coopers out there today. One significantly looking a little bit different because it has some fuel tanks on the side. Then we've got the Ferrari 312, the Honda RA300, the Lotus 49, the Eagle Westlake Mark 1, and the McLaren M6A. So those are our cars that our drivers will be using today. But let's head out on track so we can find out what our drivers are doing. So as I said, it is going to be a wet qualifying and a wet race kind of situation. And our drivers are practicing in mid-wet conditions. It is about 15% rain at the moment. The track it's got some slight dry patches, but so we are running Mosport in its classic configuration. The only difference between the modern version of Mosport and the classic is that the curbs would not be present, but the layout hasn't really significantly changed. So it's probably familiar to a lot of drivers that have played Grand Prix Legends, and it is a very classic layout. It's very tight. It's a big elevation change for our drivers, which could prove quite difficult in the wet if they're pushing a bit too hard. But we do have about a 10-minute to 15-minute qualifying session. I believe it's 10 minutes in about 8 minutes' time. But at the moment, Tony Talviti does top the timesheets with a 1:14.5. We don't know whether that was actually in mixed conditions or whether that was in the full wet that we've got now. But drivers are going to have to be very careful. There is no changing of tyres, and it wouldn't matter anyway because these cars do run on bias ply tyres, so they are treaded. So it wouldn't really make too much difference anyway. But we're going to have to see how the drivers are going to have to deal with the visibility. As I say, this is one of the shorter tracks on the calendar, plus one of the narrower tracks on the calendar. Now, I've tried this myself, and it does get a bit tight, and I think the drivers are going to really struggle with visibility and overtaking other drivers as well. So, as we can see, Bjorn Hagman just coming down the hill towards the Moss corner, which I found very difficult. The car does tend to sometimes hit the ground, so out of the Moss corner and coming out along the Mario Andretti straightaway. As we see Tony Talviti doing the same. Now this, I believe, is going to be one of the passing places as they come down the back straight. They'll come over this small crest, and drivers have got to be very careful that they don't hit the red line going over this little crest under the bridge coming up. Got to hit it pretty much straight, and be careful not to run wide. They do have a little concrete area on their outside there, so through the final two corners called the S's, and into the Whites corner and across the finishing line. So quite a tight layout. It drops down into turn 1, so you've got to keep it tight into turn 1. See that the pit lane exit is right on the racing line there, so cars do exit feed into traffic, so you've got to be very careful. A couple of different patches of concrete and tarmac as well that our drivers have to deal with, which might have a little different grip levels. So I believe that was Michael Masaryk. I think he's another one of our drivers that is taking a different Cooper today. So you see some different Coopers with one of which I think has fuel tanks on the side of it. So we'll have to see if we can get another shot of Michael Masaryk again. Yeah, so that's got an engine cover on the back there. So slightly different to the normal Cooper that we'll see. In fact, that's probably the T79 rather than T81. As Michael Masaryk slides down into the Moss corner. As I say, it's very hard to get down off that, I wouldn't call it banking really, but off that really big crest, and you dip down into this seemingly a valley here, and you've got to get the braking absolutely spot on. I don't think there will be many passing opportunities up there because it's a very risky place to pass. But something I didn't mention at the start was the fact that these drivers have to take a different car for every round, so they have We started off with about 7 to 8 cars to choose from, but the car set has expanded since we've started this league, and we've gone up to about 10 cars. So the choice has been a bit more than usual, but drivers can't take the same car twice in a season. So you can see Tony Tabiti coming down the back straight in a Lotus 49. Now I've got my cheat sheet up so I can actually see what people have taken before. So Maddie Shepherd is currently in the McLaren. Maddie Shepherd, championship leader, has taken the Brabham BT24, the Cooper T81, the Eagle and the Honda so far. So we haven't seen a lot of BRMs out there. I've been kind of pained to see that there's not been any BRMs taken to the track. We did have one last week at Fuji, but it was Phil Brown, I believe, and I don't think Phil Brown lasted an awful lot of time. But we do have 2 BRMs in the field, Romain Lebreau and Julien Pors, who are our resident French drivers that have been taking, I think they're reminiscent of the Matra paint scheme, so light blue Matra paint schemes. So you'll see a BRM in bright blue, I think, for this round, if it's properly displaying them. But so we are just about to roll over to qualifying in about 3 minutes time. But if we just go down the order, so Manny Shepherd in the McLaren, so we've got Phil Brown in the Cooper. We're not sure what Cooper that is. Here is Romain Lebreau, as you can see. It looks a bit dark because we are in overcast conditions, but that is a blue Matra coloured, runs slightly wide, and that takes him to the barrier. So with this wet weather, that concrete on the outside doesn't really save you, it seems. And we have Rick Law back in the championship. So we have about 11 drivers to battle in qualification. And it is going to be wet in qualification. The conditions do roll over from one session to the other, and there might be a little more rain, so I'd imagine that drivers have got to get out there and put a lap in, so they get the best opportunity on the best conditions possible, because I think it's only going to get worse. I do have the weather for the actual race, and it is going to start off not raining at all, but the track should still be wet from qualification. The temperature is going to come down from a nice chilly 20 degrees down to about 18 degrees Celsius. But we are going to end up with full rain condition. It just depends how hard the rain is going to fall. So we should see a pretty slick track by the end. So I imagine after 60 minutes, drivers will just be trying to hang on. And I'm thinking that our attrition rate of only 6 drivers finishing, this is going to be a really tough test for our drivers. I'm expecting a few spins, perhaps, but maybe a few people will put some practice in and try to, because these cars can be a little bit tricky in dry conditions. Maybe going a bit slower in the wet might even the field out a little, but still you don't really want to be pushing too much, so you got to be really careful on the gas pedal. No stamping of the gas pedal. So Costas Canzura is currently second in the championship. As I said at the start, he really does need to win the final 2 Grand Prix if he's got any chance of taking this championship. What we did see at Fuji was an absolute disaster by Maddie Shepherd, making many mistakes. Was up to about first or second in the first section of the race, but that kept making mistakes and dropping down the order, and was able to work her way back up to, I believe it was, 3rd place. And I think she was very lucky that there was a high attrition rate, but Fuji on paper, the layout didn't look like it was going to be a hard Grand Prix, but it turned out that that was what it turned out to be. So we have rolled over to qualification. We've got 10 minutes. You can see our driver's already lining up at the end of the pit lane. Tony Talviti wants to get out there and get a lap in, because we are expecting some rain a bit later on. It is raining a little bit at the moment. So we're just waiting for the red light to turn green. There we go. So out Tony Talviti comes. So I was reading a few people's comments about this Grand Prix, and I believe that we do have someone in our race that is Canadian, and it was actually present at the 1967 Grand Prix. So that is, we've seen the real thing. Imagine they got soaking wet. So imagine driving the exact cars that you witnessed back in 1967 in the exact conditions that you saw that day. Drivers trying to find out where the grip is. So Tony Talviti, I think that's Lars Hagman just behind in the Lotus. Now just be aware I am using automatic cameras today, so the game is going to be choosing what action we look at, but I can pick and choose what action we look at, but sometimes the game can override my decision. We had a yellow flag just after the Moss corner, but they've got going again. I think that with Romain Lebreau just having a little bit of a spin, but no harm done. So Tony Talviti comes through the first corner to start the lap. Let's see if we can get an idea of some of the sector times we're going to be doing. So through the what is the Quebec corner. Towards one of the hardest corners of the track, so we drop down from here down into this big dip towards the Moss corner, which is a double right-hander. So you can see the rain coming down, so already conditions on people's fast laps are going to be treacherous. So down the back straight we come. So Tony Talviti with the first sector, 31.59. Seems to be the fastest. He is the first to hit these sector times. So comes through the whites corner for the last. And across the line, I believe he's the second to come across the line, but you should be able to go provisional pole with this lap time. 1:18.0. And Lars Hagman pops in and a 1:18.7. So not far behind. So Phil Brown in one of the Coopers here. Just coming across the line. Put in his lap time. Phil Brown goes fourth. So people putting in their first lap times. Two Eagles here. So Costas Kanzouris. Possibly following Rick Law over the line there. So Maddie Shepherd, championship leader. Now I did think that she would possibly take it easy at Fuji, but it did turn out that she was pushing quite a lot. Probably trying to take the championship in the fourth round when she could have maybe settled for some points. But if she's done her calculations, then she'll know that she only has to take 2 third places to take the 6th Series Championship. So Tony Talviti looking like he's possibly going to go a bit faster here, putting in purple sectors. Again, we've got someone coming to grief at the Moss corner there. I believe that's Phil Brown that's gone around. So Phil Brown has come to a stop. He's just waiting for a clean bit of track to get going again. But it looks like he's kept the engine running. He does indeed get it going. So Michael Masaryk currently in 4th place. So one thing to watch out for, of course, is to don't hit any of these curves, because these curves can be very, very slippy in the wet. So the provisional pole has now moved down to a 1:17.5. So Tony did improve at that point. We've got a yellow flag up here. I believe Maddie Shepherd has gone round. just getting going again. You can see on the left-hand side of your screen there. As I believe that was one of the... That was either Julian Paws or Romain Lebreau just going around. They seem to be having a few problems with getting onto that main straight there, putting the power down in those BRMs. But it's good to see the BRMs out there. Again, we focus on Tony Tauviti. A good first sector, but possibly slowed in the middle sector, with having to avoid that stricken car in the middle of the track. So with just under 5 minutes to go, it's Tauviti that leads, Hagman in second, Shepard third, Masaryk in fourth, Brown in fifth. So the rain is increasing. It's not going to get any better than this. So drivers have got to be hoping that their tyres stay warm. So we might not see any more improvements in the last 5 minutes of qualification. Unfortunately, Romain Lebreau has not been able to set a time. So currently he's sitting down in 11th place at the moment. So we're up the back straight we come. Also our second place in the championship as well. Kansouris is languishing down in 9th place at the moment, which is very unlike him. And I think track position is going to be key at this particular track. It is one of the tightest we've been at, and it's one of the fastest in lap time as well. So the track, looking at my little stats here. So about 3.95 kilometers, 2.45 miles. So quite a short circuit in regards to the other tracks that we've been doing this season. Brown getting it slightly wrong coming through the Moss corner. He's going to hopefully not be stricken across the track there. Unfortunately he was. He just wanted to get out of the way there, so that was well judged. He was facing completely the wrong way, and he didn't really want to mess up anyone's lap, so he got off the racing line as quick as possible. And again, I think he's waiting for a gap in the traffic, and traffic just doesn't quit, so he can't get back on the track. But qualification continues. Tauviti leads by 0.4 of a second from Hagman in second. We haven't seen an awful lot of Hagman in this championship. Hagman is languishing down in 6th place in the championship. He did start off well with a 3rd place in the first round, but since then he has struggled, only being in the points once, which was the 2nd round, but has struggled ever since. So Phil Brown finally got going again, and he's thankfully able to get across the line. Didn't look like he had damage, it was just a small spin. Tony Tauviti again trying to carry too much speed into the Moss corner there. So running off the track to let some of his competitors through. So he did put a purple sector in the first sector there, but unfortunately that little spin meant that lap is abandoned, and we've got just under 1 minute to go, so he will get across the line to put in one final lap. See if he can push that provisional pole position away from the rest of the field. So Maddie Shepard currently in 3rd. Back in the traffic at the moment. She's made some stunning starts this season. But this track being so narrow, getting off the line is going to be very difficult. We have seen a few people not being able to get these cars moving or get the clutch bite points correct. So Costas Kanzouras has finally put a representative time in. He's up to 4th place. So that's good to see. Lars Hagman still in 2nd, but not setting the timesheets alight. And Tony Talviti again frustrated and not being able to better his time, but I think Lars Hagman is not going to better his time. He's yellow in the first sector, so no personal bests. As he comes down, cutting it close to that white line on the outside there, as he comes through the S's, up towards the white's corner for the last time. And across the line he will come. He spins over the line, I think in frustration, and couldn't quite get close to Talviti at the top there. Maddie Shepherd across the line. Can she improve to the front row? No, she stays in 3rd. Does improve her time, but stays in 3rd. So on the 2nd row. So Costas Kanzouras. Can Kanzouras pop up to the front row? He will have to improve quite significantly. He's not really putting any personal bests in. And sliding away through the S's, I think this lap is ruined. As he comes back into the pits. So we've only got, I think that's all of our drivers completing their laps. So we can set the grid. That is all she wrote. So a fascinating qualification session. It, as expected, it didn't really get any better with the conditions. They just got worse. So you had to be out there early and put in a lap as soon as possible. So let's have a look at the starting order. So this is the grid for the 5th round of the Formula 1 1967 Championship. Front row is taken by Talviti and the Hagman, both in the Lotuses. Maddie Shepherd in 3rd in the McLaren, Costas Kanzouras in 4th in the Eagle. Michael Masaryk in one of the Coopers in 5th, with Phil Brown again in a Cooper in 6th. Bjorn Hagman in 7th in a Lotus. Julian Bors in one of the BRMs. In 8th, John Vandergeest in a Lotus in 9th, Rick Law in the Eagle in 10th, and Romain Lebreau couldn't quite get the BRM working in qualification, and he will round out the final position on the grid in 11th. So drivers have about 5 minutes qualification to just get their eye in, perhaps assess the conditions. We're possibly going to have a little bit of a dry spell at the start of this race, but we're not expecting any rain in the first fifth of the race. But remember, this is a 60-minute race. It does normally start out with a flurry of action, and then it settles down a little in the middle, and then there's normally a sting in the tail. So I'm just gonna take a drink of water before I lose my dry my dry throat is killing me. So if you don't know about Mosport, in fact, the circuit has been around since 1961. In fact, so 64 years it's been around, in a slightly different configuration in terms of just the curbs are a little bit different, but it does hold in its current form the IMSA Sports Car Championship. Along with the NASCAR Canada Series, also the Trans Am Series, the SEC Canada Series, And the CSBK series. I'm not sure what the CSBK series is. Superbike Championship, so they run bikes around here. How about that? So the Formula 1 Grand Prix was held between 1961 and 1967. And they also drove here in 1969. Had a break in 70, and then went 1971 to 74. Had a break in 75, and then 1976 to 77. And 77 was the last year they ran Formula 1 around here. So it didn't really change an awful lot. It's remained the same in terms of corner profile and elevation change. I'd imagine lots of these tyre walls and things weren't there back in the 60s. So it was a much different circuit in terms of safety back then. But yeah, so we're looking forward to 60 minutes of racing around here. I've been looking forward to this one just to see how our driver's going to cope with it, because as I say, I have driven these circuits, given them a little bit of a test, just to see what these cars drove like around. The first 4 circuits were absolute monsters in terms of just how long the circuits were and how technical they were. But we've come down to the last 2 rounds on 2 of the shortest circuits on the calendar and 2 of the fastest. And 2 of the narrowest circuits on the calendar as well. But these 2 circuits were on the calendar in 1967, so it's quite fitting that we round out this championship with the actual circuits that these cars drove on back in 67. The moment before Formula 1 decided to put wings on their cars. So this was when the cars were a bit more pure without all the aerodynamic wings and winglets and things like that. So the last year of that. So coming down to the last moments of quali and the warm-up rather. Looks like we have switched over. It is a standing start. We're not expecting any rolling starts from this, so we're starting on a little bit of an incline near the back of the grid, so drivers got to be a little bit careful how they negotiate that. But we've got 11 drivers on the grid, and it's going to be a little tight down into turn 1, so I'm watching to see whether everyone can keep their nose clean. I'm hoping they do. Remember, there is a championship on order here. Our championship leader is down in 3rd, with 2nd place down in 4th. Right, on the green lights. Gonna wait for the green lights. And away we go from the line. Looks like one of our Lotuses has broken free. That's Lars Hagman, gets an absolute stormer of a start. Maddie Shepherd's already up the inside of Talviti, who had to take it a little bit slowly there as they head down into turn 2. So from the 2nd row up to the 1st row, Maddie Shepherd is trying to perhaps get out front, doesn't want any spray in front of her. So we go on board with Maddie Shepherd. I think that was Tony Talviti that was trying to overtake around the outside there. Very, very brave. Kostas Kanzouras currently in 4th, so he stays in 4th. So as they're coming up the back straight for the first time, Kostas Kanzouras right in the wheel tracks of Tony Talviti. That Lotus is streaking away in front. A little bit of a gap behind to 5th. But the top 4 are away. In fact, the leader is away by about 1.7 seconds, so he made a massive start. Lars Hagman made a great start, and the rest of the field have bunched up and battled within each other, so it's good having a clear track out in front of you, it seems. So John van der Kies, slightly anonymous in qualification, he's back in 8th place, chasing Phil Brown. We do have a little bit of a gap between 9th and 10th there, so Bjorn Hagman and Rick Law out the back. So something must have happened to them at the start. So Tony Talviti now got his tyres a bit warmed up. He's now on the chase of 2nd place Maddie Shepherd. So the sun is quite deceptive here. I don't think that's going to stay sunny for very long, but John van der Geest again trying to chase Phil Brown into the Moss corner. Visibility must be really tough for these guys. All you can see out in front of you is just this big wall of spray, but the top four, in fact 7th, 3rd and 4th, are right together here. Costas Kanzouras keeping a watching brief. Tony Talviti is... Oh, that's the championship leader gone around. Unfortunately, pings off 2 drivers there, and one of our drivers was Costas Kanzouras, I think. So he's got to wait for his car to flip over there. That was unfortunate. I don't think he really had anywhere to go there. Somehow, Maddie Shepherd stays 3rd. I'm not sure how. But she got it all out of shape into that bottom corner. And spun one way and spun the other. And I think one driver chose one way and one driver chose the other. And ended up colliding with the championship contender. So Costas Kanzouras had the raw deal there. He's out the back at the moment in 10th. So that was just a bit unfortunate there. I don't think there's no malice really involved, because Maddie Shepherd was broadside across the track just trying to get the thing controlled. So that's going to shake up the championship quite significantly. And it might actually put pay to our battle that we were thinking of having for this race. But Lars Hagman continues on 3.6 seconds out front. Talviti now in 2nd, Maddie Shepherd 3rd. Julian Paws has crept up to 4th with Masaryk in 5th. So Julian Paws and Masaryk doing battle here. So you see that Julian Paws again in that Matra coloured BRM. Lars Hagman putting their fastest lap in of a 1:18.2. So drivers have got to make hay while the sun shines, as they say, because the rain is going to come down at some point at the start of the race, and it won't let up until the finish, so it's only going to get wetter. Yes, we've got the driver going very well. Is that Julian Paws going very, very wide, using the concrete? So thankfully he's able to get going again. Now, if this was possibly the 1967 Grand Prix, that would have all have been gravel, and he wouldn't have got away with that. Well, in fact, it probably would have just been grass back in those days, but so that's unfortunate. Julian Paws was on for a good finish, going up to 4th place, but now he's down to 10th. He did have an absolute nightmare at Fuji. So this group is absolutely together. A whole gaggle of cars. So Bjorn Hagman trying to get past Romain Lebreau in the BRM. That Lotus Power. Got to be careful here. I don't think you want to go 3 wide, boys. So over the crest. And I think the BRM was able to stay ahead there. Costas Kanzouras took advantage of that though. And he's made his way back up to 8th place. He's possibly driving a bit angry because through no fault of his own, he's back in the pack. So takes a punt up the inside, not literally, but he goes up the inside of Romain Lebreau, catches him a bit unawares there, and has left the door open for the car behind. But the car behind, these are actually, I was going to say French teammates here, but battling away. Romain Lebreau and Julian Paws side by side through turn 2. That's amazing car control by both of those to stay off each other. You don't want to get those wheels interlocked. There's fabulous battle between the 2 French drivers. Julian Paws thinking around the outside so he can get the inside down to Moss corner. That's an epic move down there. So up to 8th goes Julian Paws, so making up for lost time. So you can pass around here. I was quite surprised that we're seeing drivers finding different lines. And the Lotus driver Bjorn Hagman was able to take advantage of Romain Lebreau, unfortunately being a bit slow out that corner. So if we look at our biggest winners and losers in the first 7 minutes of this race. You see that John van der Geest is one of our biggest winners, going up 3 places to 6th place. Unfortunately, one of our biggest losers was Kostas Kanzouras, going down 3 places. He has been able to make up that time in the last couple of laps, though. But first and second are away. There are only 2.3 seconds between them. But there is a big gap now formed to 3rd place, as you might expect after Maddie Shepherd's spin, which is going to have championship connotations here. Just have to see where Kostas Kanzouras can come back, but it's a long way to go in this race. 52 minutes of racing still to go. So John van der Geest trying to chase Phil Brown down for that 5th place. John van der Geest will be running in VR today. That's going to be really immersive with all the spray literally in your face. So Tony Zaviti now pushing on to try and get that lead. So through all the kerfuffle, he stays in 2nd place, but still behind the leader of Lars Hagman. So through turn 1 we go, John van der Geest. So this is the gap for the lead. So 1st and 2nd separated by 1.2 seconds. So Lars Hagman did have it his own way. He was able to get off the line and into turn 1 in the lead. But I think Tony Talviti possibly has something to say about that. He possibly wants to get in the lead before the rain really comes down. It has been sprinkling a little in the first few laps, but we are expecting some big rainfall a bit later on. So you've got to make the most of what is going to be the best conditions in this Grand Prix. And you see there isn't a lot of spray either, but this is only going to get worse. So drivers have got to be prepared to going into a big wall of spray. You've also got to be thinking about where you're going to change your lines to. I can't think that these tyres are really going to overheat, so have a think about where the wet parts of the track are. I'd say there's possibly a little bit of a dry line forming already, but that's going to soon be a bit different. That's a spinner there. That is Michael Masaryk down from I think 5th. He's staying out the way. Doesn't want to rejoin in traffic there. So Michael Masaryk unfortunately goes down to 9th place. So that means Kostas Kanzouras on his fight back is up to 6th place. That's a Lotus going wide, and Kostas Kanzouras says thank you very much. John van der Geest unfortunately outbraking himself into turn 3. So Kostas Kanzouras now putting in the lap times. I did want to check what the lap times were. So he is on the pace of the leaders, but he has had to fight through other cars, whereas the leaders don't seem to be pushing on too much. They are under a second now between the 2 leaders, but I wonder whether they are pushing on. I wonder whether Talviti wants to put Lars Hagman under a little bit of pressure, maybe expecting that little bit of a mistake. So Julian Paws now fighting back from the back of the grid. Now up to 7th place and is on the back of John van der Geest, but the two leaders here. It looks like Lars Hagman possibly made a mistake in that last lap. Down into turn 2 they come. The director is having trouble thinking of what battle to look at here, because there are battles all the way up and down the field. Julian Paws currently trying to fight back up to 6th place here. So that's John van der Geest in front. So it looks like Masaryk has come into the pits. I don't know whether this is going to be retirement or not, or whether he had a little bit of a spin. Julian Paws coming down to what I thought was the inside there. That is Lars Hagman spilling out of the lead there. So did the pressure work? Did Lars Hagman finally succumb to the pressure there? And around he went down into the corners before the S's, I believe. So Tony Talviti now leads. It looks like Lotus's line astern here. Now John van der Geest, he was surprised down into the that downhill section by Julian Paws. I don't know if Julian Paws wanted to overtake there, but it seemed like it was a little bit rushed. And John van der Geest suddenly saw a car alongside. Nearly scared him off the road. A very unconventional place to pass. I think these drivers having to think out the box a little. So Bjorn Hagman now chasing John van der Geest. Lotus versus Lotus here. I'm seeing that 10th place of Rick Law was stopped on track, but he has got it going again. So John van der Geest trying to get the power down, but can't quite do it. So differing lines as well. You see John van der Geest took to a bit of a wider line coming down towards the Moss corner. Whereas Bjorn Hagman was slightly tighter towards the apex or the white line. Right, so now a big gap has formed between first and second of Lars Hagman's spin at 7.7 seconds. Tony Talviti is the fastest car on the circuit at the moment with his 1:17.49. Now Costas Kanzouris is now up to 5th and is chasing Phil Brown. Phil Brown looked a bit easy, didn't it? I think Phil Brown does not want to get involved. I think Phil Brown just wants to finish this race. Phil Brown has had some torrid results this season, and he's just wants to be able to finish a race. He's had a 10th place and two 11th places and a 7th place, so just wants to get to the finish, I think. But he's in 5th place at the moment, so that's a good place to be. Coming in a little bit of a void on the track as well. 4th and 5th are together with 6th, 7th and 8th behind. So that's 6th, this is 7th. And you can say 8th just behind there. I think John van der Geest has been able to put out a little bit of a gap. So Tony Talviti going even faster. 1:17.1. So trying to put some lap time in, trying to extend that gap. And again, I'm seeing a yellow on track. That is, that's Rick Law. It's gone around. Unfortunately, he has to wait for everyone to go by, and it's down to 11th place. That's unfortunate. So, quarter of the race gone. Looking at the skies, they don't seem to be getting any greyer, but the rain is falling, and it does look like it's falling a little bit heavier than it was before. So drivers are now into hard mode. So it's going to be very difficult to follow other cars. But I'm very impressed with Kanzouris. Knocked down to near the back, but he's able to fight his way out to where he actually started the race. In 4th. So that's a stunning drive so far, but as I say, Kanzouris does have to win the race, and Matty Shepherd can just sit in 3rd. But still, I think just surviving this race would be, I wouldn't say a miracle, but it would be a great achievement. You did see that big attrition rate at Fuji, and again I thought Fuji, by looking at the layout of it, I thought it might be relatively easy in terms of technicality, the big sweeping turns, but some of the bumps were quite vicious at Fuji, and it caught a lot of drivers out. Now, it did have a couple of engine blow-ups as well. These engines can be a bit volatile, especially if drivers have been parked for a little while. I'm seeing that Rick Law has now got going. He was sat there for a little while, so let's hope his engine hasn't overheated. Yeah, I've seen that a couple of times when drivers have not got the air through their engine. They've been stationary for a little while, then the engines can overheat. And of course, the engines do not like being redlined either, so there is that. So, this is the closest battle on track at the moment between 6th, 7th and 8th. Bjorn Hagman at the back of this battle. So quite rightly our director is actually following this battle, because the top 3 are now completely spread out. You can see the lead is now up to about 12 seconds. With Maddie Shepherd a bit further behind, but I think everyone is now bracing themselves for the rain. The weather forecast was posted before the race by the admin, so it is expected, but it's just dependent on how cruel the game wants to be, I suppose, depending on the level of rain. But it should be steady rainfall from about a fifth at a distance through. That is Maddie Shepherd, I think, taking a little bit of a spin. Saw on the map. So, look at Maddie Shepherd. You'll see just behind Maddie Shepherd. This is a different camera angle than we've had before. That car just behind her is her championship contender here. So let's see how much she wants to fight this, whether she's done the maths or not. She can actually let Costas Kanzouras through. It still isn't enough in terms of points. So she may play the long game here. And I think with the rain and with the tough conditions of this track, I think I would be inclined to say think of the big picture. But then again, I'm not in the cockpit, and I'm not. I can see it from track side, and I can see my spreadsheet full of points and the predictions. So 3rd and 4th now together. 1st and 2nd in the championship on the road. So looking at the championship positions and championship scores so far, Costas Kanzouras has got 3 second places this season and a 4th place in the 2nd round. No wins this season, so we would love to come away with a win. It's just unfortunately he got caught up in that accident of Maddie Shepherd spinning in the middle of the track. He chose one way, and unfortunately the car was there when he got there. So John van der Gies has now dropped back towards Bjorn Hagman. This battle between 7th and 8th is hotting up. It's funny how all cars seem to be grouped together on one side of the track. We have 5th with a lapped car in between, and then we have 6th, 7th and 8th. So Costas Kanzouras is going to have to be aggressive here and assertive if he wants to take this championship. So this is Eagle versus McLaren here. So Costas Kanzouras trying up the inside here. It's going to be slightly damp on the inside line there. Slight wiggle from Maddie Shepherd. Slight bit of oversteer, which made the pass a little bit easier. So Costas Kanzouras has got to hope that he can now run away from Maddie Shepherd. Maybe Maddie Shepherd is thinking, I want that place right back because I need the points. I want to wrap this thing up as quick as possible. But again, big picture here. She will only be losing about 2 or 3 points. So it's, if I've done in my head, it's 4 points for 3rd and 3 points for 4th. So she would only be dropping 1 point. So that, I think that's a good compromise. So just settle in for this next 38 minutes. But as you all know, and if you've driven yourself in virtual or in real life, you'll know that once the helmet goes on, then sometimes common sense goes out the window. So we're getting a slight bit of sunshine here. So the cloud cover is moving off a little, but I'm not expecting that to stay around very long. You can see in the distance there the clouds are still grey. And the rain is still falling, but it's not falling at a very big rate. Temperature is now about 18 degrees Celsius, track temperature about 35, so I think the track temperature and having a lot of heat in it is helping these drivers a bit. So the track isn't becoming as damp as I thought it would. So we're not seeing a lot of standing water either, but of course that may change. So 7th place is now Paws, John van der Geest in 8th. Bjorn Hagman has got ahead of this bunch, is now in 6th place, so something happened while we were focusing on 3rd and 4th, and Paws, I think, has gone around. Slight collision with the barrier, but I hope that's not suspension damage. I seem to remember that Paws had a suspension damage last time out and just wanted to get to the finish, and his car was crabbing an awful lot, so it was just an achievement just to get to the finish. So hopefully it doesn't go that way this time. But the BRMs are together on track, 8th and 9th. So Paws having a bit of curb there, so it doesn't look like that car's handling very well, does it? It looks like snaps of oversteer. Maybe if the weather gets a bit wetter, it might soften the car a bit. So that gap between Maddie Shepherd and Kanzouris for the championship has grown to about 2.3 seconds. So it does look like Maddie Shepherd is perhaps playing the long game. Kanzouris does need to find 16 seconds to grab a second place. That is a tall order, but we haven't seen the worst of this weather yet. And I know I keep saying it, but I am expecting more rain. So we're in the kind of half-distance lull. A lot of the drivers are now equidistant from each other. Just kind of putting in their pace, probably chasing lap times. Trying to stay to a pace rather than setting the fastest pace. So John van der Geest now to 7th. We can see Bjorn Hagman ahead. 8th place of Paws has gone around again just before the final turn. So there's something a bit amiss with that car, I think. But he's managed to get going again. So 6 race championship. Drivers have already done 4 rounds at some gigantic tracks on the calendar. So we started off at Mount Panorama in 67. And then we went to Longford in 1967. A track which was basically Australian countryside. For our 3rd round, we went to France for Clermont-Ferrand, formerly known as Charade, or rather is now known as Charade. But we were out in the French countryside because it was a 65 version, so it was the longer version of the circuit, which now doesn't exist. And that was 8 kilometres long. Slight slip. John van der Geest, it is becoming a bit slippier out there, especially when you get offline into the wet stuff. You can definitely see there's a difference between being on the racing line where it's a little bit dry. So we started off at 6 kilometres for our racetracks, and then we went up to 8 kilometres for the 3rd round, and then from there we've started to come down. So our 4th round was 5.94 kilometres long. That was Fuji. Would be very difficult for our drivers. And we've now come to Mosport Park for the 5th round. 3.95 kilometres long, and then next Wednesday, we'll be heading to Watkins Glen, one of my favourite circuits in the form of the layout that we've chosen. It's the 1960s layout, so it's Watkins Glen with a start straight is in a completely different place to where it is in modern day. So I'm glad we've got a version of that to play with next week. So will we still have a championship to fight for between first and second next week, or will it be wrapped up today? So Masaryk, after his unfortunate incident, looked like just a spin, but he's now down in 10th place, and it's a recovery drive from Masaryk. Looking down at his results, he's actually third in the championship. He's been quite consistent. He got a win last time out, so he's possibly thinking he's gone from hero to zero here. But he has had a step on the podium as well, and it looks like Tony Taubiti is now lapping cars. So that's Rick Law, I believe, in the Eagle. But thank you for joining us for our broadcast this season. It's been good to broadcast something a bit more historic. And we started off broadcasting some 1950s 6-round season, where again we had to drivers had to be very, very patient. So around, I can see 7th place is stopped on the back straight here. That's 7th place there. That is Van der Geest. What's happened to Van der Geest? That's a DNF. Was that an engine failure? He did stop and pull to one side there. But we did in fact see John Van der Geest pull to one side in the 3rd round, because he had to real life was calling, but it looks like pulled to one side, and that is a DNF, so that's unfortunate for John Van der Geest. He was looking on the cusp of points there. Visibility is an issue when you get up close behind another driver. Just imagine coming into a corner and just being absolutely blind. Sometimes just having to trust where the corner is and hoping there's not a car going to come out the spray. But our first retirement of the race. So remember, points only go down to 6th place in this championship. But again, not a lot of these drivers are racing for points. They race because it's fun, and that's a good way to go about it. But a lot of these drivers are very competitive and are going for wins and championships. These cars have proved quite difficult. They have had a few changes through the season. A few cars being added. So our drivers are making the most of that, because remember, car choice is different for every single round. So they've had to do a little bit of practice. Maddie Shepherd doing the impression of a rally driver up to the Moss corner. Looked like she was trying to coax the throttle there, and I think she knew that. And Rick Law does an absolute carbon copy. Does some pirouettes into turn 1. And it looks like in the wet weather, it's not easy to save these cars once they've slipped around. You heard that Maddie Shepherd was kind of teasing the throttle a little. And I think she knew that if she stepped on the throttle, it would just lose grip and just go around quicker. But it was at the point of no return. And around she went. So she's now dropped about 9 seconds behind 3rd place of Kanzuris, who's on screen at the moment, just pushing on. So we did see that gap, and I did say that 16 seconds was a lot to catch. But 3rd place only by 13.5 seconds, so he is closing the gap. So Masaryk, after John Van der Geest's unfortunate retirement, is now up to 9th place. The race was quite up and down at Fuji. It was quite hard to keep track of what was going on. I normally kind of fill in the points part way through the race to just give myself a little bit of an idea of what the championship's going to be like, and I filled most of it in near the end of the race, and then we had retirements late on in the race, and we had crashes with spins, so it wasn't settled. So if you want to watch that Grand Prix, it's well worth a watch to see how our drivers coped with the bumps and the banked turn of Fuji. I did it myself, I had to drive around it myself, and it was quite good fun. So one car I'm not seeing out there today is the Honda. The Honda has been a popular choice. So again, I do have my cheat sheet, so I can tell you what has been the most popular choice so far. So in the first 4 rounds, the Cooper T81 and the Eagle have been, well, in fact the Cooper T81, the Eagle and the Honda have been the most popular choice so far by our drivers, by being picked 8 times. So that will change today, because I think we've got a couple of Eagle drivers today. Phil Brown taking a bit of a scenic route there. That's a very interesting way to come into the second corner of the Moss complex. So as I said, the least picked car has been the BRM and the McLaren, but that will change today also. So now it looks like it's getting a bit slippy. Braking points are becoming a bit more elongated and catching a few of our drivers out. The lead is now up to 25 seconds. And Hagman right on the tail of Phil Brown here. And we did see that Phil Brown did let Costas Kanzuras through quite easily when he came upon him. So I'm wondering whether Phil Brown is wanting to just get to the finish. As I say, Phil Brown has been very unlucky in this series so far. I believe he was the driver that we saw doing barrel rolls in Longford in Australia in round 2. So we're wondering whether possibly John van der Geest had a engine retirement. We have had engine retirements where it has been just overheating. We've seen like white smoke. We also had catastrophic failures with an engine blow up with flames out the back. But you would think that drivers may be taking it a little bit easier in the wetter weather, being a bit smoother. But we'll have to see after the race what the apparent problem was. But on the tail end of the points here, Bjorn Hagman currently looking for another point. And currently in 6th, he has 1 of them. So Bjorn Hagman currently 8th place in the championship. He wasn't here for the 4th round, so he's dropped a few points in the championship. He's actually level on points with Tony Talvidi, but that will change today if they positions stay as they are. That was very lucky. I think Phil Brown trying to best to hold the brake there, and Bjorn Hagman had heart in the mouth because he picked one way to go and just got through. I was kind of waiting as we went on board. I was waiting for the bang, but that bang never came. So Phil Brown did go around, and Bjorn Hagman is now up to 5th place. Maddie Shepherd down to 4th. Been quite consistent. Lap times have now dropped a bit. The top 3 are still in the 118s and 119s. So Costas Kanzuras is going to come up against another Eagle Westlake in front, but it is not for position. But Tony Talviti out front. I haven't seen an awful lot of him after his that first bit of drama. We also have to find out about how Lars Hagman lost the lead. We didn't see it on camera, we just saw the aftermath of Lars Hagman getting going again. I'm wondering how Julian Paul's car is handling after that little collision with the Armco. So the gap between second and third has grown a little. Fourth place is around. That is our championship leader. But she managed to get it going again. Unfortunately, she's going to come into the clutches of Bjorn Hagman here. So the mistakes creeping in with only 22 minutes to go. These points may be quite important for the championship. So Bjorn Hagman could actually spice things up here. But does he have the pace? Looking at pace before, he's able to do a 118. I was actually expecting there to be a lot more rain than this, but maybe the game gods have decided to make it easier on these guys and not give us torrential rain. I know that you can set a little bit of a limit, because I know that if you tried setting it to 100% rain, it would get very treacherous very, very quickly. Right, you can actually run in races that would possibly be red flagged. So Michael Mazurek after his... Oh no, that is Bjorn Hagman is off. That looks terminal to me. That is a smoking engine, so that is a Lotus expired. So the curse of the Lotus engines has continued. Bjorn Hagman was set for maybe banging on the door of fourth place there. But unfortunately, possibly being a bit too eager on those gear shifts. So Maddie Shepherd again has been let out. Got an out of jail card. And has been let off the hook, as it were. So another Lotus expired perhaps. So if you followed the 1967 season, you'll know that it wasn't actually the Lotus that actually won the championship. They were by far the fastest cars on the circuit. So the Lotus 49 proved to be quite formidable. But unfortunately it was the most fragile. And in fact it was the Brabham to come up. The Brabham came away with the championship that year in the hands of, I believe it was Denny Hulme that took the championship. It was one of the Brabham drivers anyway, from memory. So, 20 minutes to go. We are now down to 9 drivers on the track. So, are we beginning to see the cracks form? So, Julian Paul is now up to 6th place. So, after his little kerfuffle and his argument with the barrier, he's now got a point on the board. And again, this may change point or positions lower down the championship table as well. We are concentrating on first and second, but there are some very close point scores. Back up my point scores. I can. So we do have Jim Cavallo. Unfortunately, Jim Cavallo's not here today, not present today. So he will drop a score. He was on 6 points, and the Lars Hagman was on 5 behind, so that's possibly going to change. But we did have Tony Talviti and Bjorn Hagman level on points on 3. We know that's now going to change because Bjorn Hagman will not score today, which is unfortunate. So I can actually be good and mark him on the table. So those are for definite no scores. Let's hope we don't have any more instances of failures. We do have still 2 Lotuses out front, but there are 2 Lotuses in the pits and retired. So I imagine that if our drivers have been paying attention, they possibly would have been looking at the retirement list and seeing that there were 2 Lotuses that went out, and then suddenly you start going, oh, maybe I should short shift. It's something that comes to mind whenever I'm racing, that if I see a driver go out with an engine failure, I kind of, take a breath and start maybe short shifting, or being a bit kinder to my engine. But these cars are extra sensitive to if you miss a gear. I did hear in some of the post-race briefings that a couple of drivers, I think it was Lance Hagman actually, that said he went from 4th down to 2nd, which unfortunately his car did not like, and pop went that car. So I think Lance Hagman actually uses an 8-shifter. He was actually set for points, I believe, at Fuji, and he actually finished 7th. But classes are DNF'd as Rick Law goes around. Seems to be having an awful lot of trouble on that part of the circuit. Tries to get the power down, but there's not a lot of traction now. It has been steadily raining throughout this entire Grand Prix, so the track has been getting steadily wetter. So Rick Law did get going again, because we can't see him on the main straight there. So we have just over 16 minutes to go. Talviti leads by 32 seconds. Lance Hagman in 2nd, Kanzuras in 3rd by about 16.5 seconds. Matty Shepherd in 4th by 22 seconds. So we've spaced out the top 4 quite significantly. Phil Brown is now back up to his 5th place. He did get overtaken briefly, or he was set to get overtaken, but he's now consolidated his 5th place. 9.9 seconds. Julian Port in that final championship point in 6th place. So quite a treacherous place to try and pass somebody. So I don't think the car ahead, I think that's a lap car ahead. I don't think they wanted to squeeze them to the outside. Actually, this is 4 position. This is Romain Nabarro, so he didn't have to pull across and let Masaryk through. This is 4 position. This is actually a battle between 7th and 8th. So Romain Nabarro in the BRM kind of felt like he had to go where the car took him when he went up the back straight. So this could be a battle on between these 2 cars, BRM versus Cooper. I'm trying to see what Cooper this is. This might be the Cooper T79 because it has the engine cover on the back. Indeed it does. So there might be a slight difference in performance. I would have thought that drivers may have thought that maybe taking the lower powered car today might be the better option. Something a bit less spiky in terms of horsepower. So we're getting some good on boards today. Oh, slightly out of shape over the hump there. We're going to go side by side over the jump. I think we are. Romain Nabarro tries to stay wide, and he does stay in front. So that was a good effort by Masaryk. But he's shown his hand a bit early there, I think. Romain Nabarro is going to be wise to that. So he might want to cover the centre of the track going over that crest. So someone telling me this isn't actually the Cooper, this might be the BT11. I might have just labelled it wrong. I think I have. That is a Brabham, isn't it? That's a BT11 Brabham. It looks a lot like a Cooper. But thanks for the correction there. That's the trouble when you have to change things from round to round. Right, let's get that sorted so we can get the right images in. That makes a bit more sense. But the BT11 and the Cooper are pretty small in terms of layout of the car, so you can see that BRM is able to stay in front. Hopping over the curbs. Playing with death here. He hops over the curb, and I think Masaryk is going to get around the outside, or was that a lapped car? I can't see because of the spray. What's going on here? There is a lap car in between here. I think that's Julian Paws in the way of Romain Lebreau here, and I think he's possibly gone wide to let the lapping cars through there. That must have been very difficult. So, seeing who was behind and where they are is very, very difficult. So, I'm unsure what happened there. Did someone unlap themselves? I'm a bit unsure what's going on, to be honest. We've got two BRMs. One of them gets really out of shape. Hopefully he's not going to be collected by the cars behind. So, Masaryk coming down into the S's. So I think we're now sorted out again. I think we're now for position up front here. So we're now Lebreau in front with 7th place and Masaryk behind in 8th. It's getting a little bit confusing further back. Who is who? Someone again maybe trying to unlap themselves here. Which I think is a fool's errand here. I'm not sure why he wanted to. That was Julian Paws there, I believe. In fact, Julian Paws is actually in front of these guys. So it was in fact Julian Paws that needed to get through because he was the lapping car. Right, that's where my confusion is. So in fact, Romain Lebreau and Masaryk have been lapped. That's what that's why I was confused. So there was a little bit of confusion, I think, between Masaryk and Julian Paws there. So Julian Paws now kicking on in 6th. Unfortunately, that has interrupted the battle between Masaryk and Lebreau. So 10 minutes remaining. Maddie Shepherd still with a gentler pace of a 120. That car still looks like it wants to kill her at any point in time. That snap of oversteer looks very, very dangerous indeed. So Masaryk has now dropped back behind Lebreau by about 1.7 seconds. He's got to do all of that catching again, unfortunately. So down here they come up to the Moss corner. No, in fact that is turn 2. Up towards turn 3. So here we go again with the shenanigans. That's Julian Paws unlapping himself. As we get a look at the leader. We haven't seen a lot of the leader. The leader has just been going about his business. He's been consistently in the 118s. And just pulling away from the rest of the field. He's got a lead of 46 seconds. So Masaryk, I think, deciding just to let the lapping cars through. That's the only other Lotus in the race. That would be Lars Hagman. So Lars Hagman coming through the lap cars here. Just in front of Masaryk. So you'll see a Lotus in here. That's second place. So second place is actually going to be lapping 6th and 7th. So So drivers have got to be very wary of where they are on the track. It's very confusing at trackside, so I imagine it's maybe even more confusing. So through all of that, Romain Lebreau letting the lapping cars through has meant that Masaryk can close right up on the back. So this battle is not over. This is the closest battle on track at the moment. Even though it's not for points, but we know that pride is a big thing. So yellow flag somewhere out on track that's 9th place of Rick Law. That seems to be the favourite place to spin, which probably means there's been a spin just around this corner here. Yeah, we can see the cloud of dust, so Rick Law's got going again. So I was wondering whether we were going to see a car stricken across the track. So Lebreau is doing exactly what I thought he would do. He's holding the centre of the track, coming through that little kink, which means that Masaryk is having to maybe take another decision of what he wants to do to pass. So Masaryk letting the eagle through there. We're going to have more problems up here because Julian Bors has gone around again. Maybe that was a short spin, but he's got going again, which means he's going to come through this lapping traffic. So it's unfortunate, really. We're waiting for this battle here, and it keeps getting interrupted by lapping cars. But meanwhile, Phil Brown is plodding on in 5th place. And absolutely no one around him. No one in front for quite a significant amount of time, and no one up behind him for a significant amount of time as well. So just under 6 minutes of the race to go. An estimate of about just over 5 laps. So going back down the straight again, Michael Masaryk wants no piece of this. So he's going to let it all sort itself out in front, between the lapping cars and the lapped cars, and then just pick up the paces if he needs to. So I believe this is a lap. I think this is still Lars Hagman that's still not got past these guys in front. And this has been the 2nd lap in a row. So there's an eagle in here as well. I'm not sure what that eagle is doing there. Is that Kanzurus trying to lap? That is Kanzurus probably trying to lap Romain Lebreau. I'm not sure. I'm getting very confused at why anyone's being held up here. And that eagle has had enough and gives the nudge to Romain Lebreau. He was stuck behind him for about 2 or 3 laps. It was in fact Kanzurus. That is 3rd place in the championship there. I think maybe drivers not paying attention to their relative, not paying attention to who's coming through. So you can see ahead of us there that I think that's Julian Bors ahead of a lapping car of Kanzurus. It's very, very hard to see. Some of these colours are a bit muted in the overcast conditions. So Masaryk now back on the tail. Now we've sorted ourselves out and we've got all those lapping cars through. We can get back to the battle between 7th and 8th. Masaryk again feigning a look to the inside of Romain Lebreau. I'm wondering whether there's possibly going to be some harsh words towards a couple of drivers, but maybe giving them a little bit of leeway considering how hard it is in the spray. And this course is pretty full on. There's no real place to have a rest. because there's no real straight on this course. So up to over the hump again. Michael Masaryk decides to go around the outside. He's already alongside by the time they come to the hump this time. Now he just needs to brake a bit later, but he's not quite done it. Unfortunately, he was run out of road there. I think that was possibly Romain Lebreau running at the edge of traction. Possibly didn't mean to push Masaryk off. But he's got to be very wary of that. The stewards might have a look at that if he does it a bit too often. But Masaryk did the absolute perfect thing of getting alongside before the what is the Mario Andretti straightaway there. So with 2 minutes to go and just over a lap to go as well, Masaryk has possibly got to think, well, where else can I have a go? His biggest opportunity has always been on that back straight. And he seems to be a lot faster than Romain Lebreau ahead. So he's tried around the outside. So maybe switch it up a bit if he can actually get on the opposite side. And he's not going to do it this lap, he's nowhere near. But it looks like Romain Lebreau has been suffering over these lumps here. He is going to go to the inside. Switches it up a bit. Romain Lebreau is going to brake as late as he can. But can't quite get the traction. So he kind of feigned him into a mistake there. Maybe thought that he had been trying around the outside for quite a significant amount of time. And Masaryk is finally by in 7th place. Although a lap down, so still no points for Masaryk, but still pretty good finish after fighting back from even a pit stop. So I'm just looking at the track map here to see where our leader is. I think our leader has just started his final lap. So this is still the closest battle on track. Let's see if Masaryk can actually pull away from Lebreau. And it looks like the sun is coming out of this part of the circuit. Who'd have thought it? But the rain has continued to hamper these drivers. That racing line has stayed pretty wet for the entirety of the Grand Prix. So, not much of a race to go. I think we should probably switch to the leader, who's actually coming through the final turns. So Tony Talviti, slight mix-up at the start, was able to avoid accident, has kept himself out of trouble, and comes away with the win of the Canadian Grand Prix. Crosses the line in first. It's going to be a long while for our second place to come through. Tony Talviti doesn't take part in a lot of our races here, but when he does take part, he normally finishes well. So Tony Talviti comes away with the win. Having to wait a significant amount of time for Lars Hagman, who's still on the back straight here. But he's pretty much by himself. So, I want to see Lars Hagman actually coming through the final couple of turns. I'm being forceful with the director. I want to see that these people are finishing. So Lars Hagman comes across the line and will finish second. Stunning drive from Lars Hagman. He was first for a small portion of this race, but does manage to come home in second with no engine failures this time out. That Lotus engine held together, thankfully. And Kostas Kanzouras, what might have been, does come home with a third place. I think Kostas Kanzouras was possibly thinking about maybe further up the grid. And Maddie Shepherd, I think, has come across the line already. So, Canadian Grand Prix over with. It looks like Lars Hagman is absolutely chuffed with that one. And I think I would be as well. Coming away with a finish like that. Happy to finish, I would imagine, is the saying. So happy to finish. So let's have a look at our results. So, the 5th round of the Canadian Grand Prix with the Formula 1 1967 Championship is as follows. So, hopefully everyone is across the line. I believe they are. Session results are as follows. So, Tony Talviti comes away with a win, his first win of the season. Lars Hagman in the Lotus will come away with a 2nd place. Lars Hagman was 6th place in the championship, and this is probably set to change in the points total. Now, Kostas Kanzouris probably was thinking of maybe getting into those 1st and 2nd places, but an accident early on knocked him down to 3rd. It was just unfortunate that he went one way, and unfortunately Maddie Shepherd was stricken across the track. Maddie Shepherd maybe wanted a little bit more out of this, but again, playing the long game, she is leading the championship, and possibly will be leading the championship when we total up the points. Phil Brown finally does finish a race. He's had nasty luck this season. This is his best finish of the season with a 5th place. Julian Paws, I imagine that's possibly a damaged car, struggling a bit and been mixed up with lapped cars at the end of the race. It was a bit confusing towards the end who was who with all that spray around, but he does get the final point in 6th. So 7th place, Michael Mazurek did make his way around Romain Lebreau in the end, but possibly felt like he could do a lot more. He is 3rd in the championship, but he will not score this time out. Will he keep the 3rd in the championship? We'll have to see. Romain Lebreau in 8th place again, will not score, but a good finish for Romain Lebreau coming home in 8th. Rick Law did get to the finish in the end, and which is again a challenge in itself. We did see a few spins from Rick Law, but he did get to the finish, and final unfortunate retirements were Bjorn Hagman, which we did see a Lotus on, or I was going to say on fire. It wasn't exactly on fire, it was had steam coming out the back. And our last unfortunate retirement was John van der Geest. Unfortunately, we didn't see him on camera, what happened to him, so we'll have to see after the race, or perhaps for our next race. So, coming up, we've got one final round to sort out the championship, which is Watkins Glen 1965. Championship not quite out of reach just yet, I don't believe. I'm going to do the points in the background, but Watkins Glen 1965, if you don't know what the 1965 layout is, it is the shortened version of the track where the start-finish line is actually just before the S bends, and it's significantly shortened. So we're looking at lap times of about 104, 105, depending on whether our admin decides on putting wet weather on the track. I don't think we'll be having wet weather on this one, but yeah, it should be a very interesting Grand Prix and a very good way to round out this championship as well. So let's have a look at the season standings. So if I've done everything correctly, they should be total up for round 5, and they are. Maddie Shepherd does leave this Grand Prix with a 9-point lead. So something dramatic will have to happen to lose the championship next round. But she still leads the championship. It's not over yet, because 9 points for a win. So we'll have to see what happens for this last round. Kostas Kanzouris stays in 2nd. Michael Mazurek stays in 3rd as well. 16 points. Julian Paws gets 4th place. He's actually level on points with Tony Talviti. Tony Talviti, with that win, they're now level on points. So Tony Talviti could possibly overtake and get 4th place or more in the last round. Lars Hagman, with that 2nd place, on 11 points in 6th. Jim Cavallo, unfortunately not around this time, stays in 7th place with 6 points. Bjorn Hagman, with that retirement, no points for him this round, stays on 3. Philip Pichler was not present this round either, stays on 9. And Romain Lebreau, only 2 points this season. He's only been able to score once this season in round 3. and unfortunately will fail to get points this round. So, what an interesting Grand Prix. I really enjoyed that. I don't know about you. I really enjoyed that. So we're set for a last lap or a last round finale at Watkins Glen. It's been very interesting seeing these cars, or seeing how these cars race around some of these older classic tracks, and tracks that these cars would have raced on, particularly Mosport and Watkins Glen, but the tracks of De Montferrand, Mount Panorama, and where was it? Longford was the other track, or the other circuit as well. So very interesting layouts, very interesting cars as well. So I'm going to note up what our drivers took this round for their cars, and we'll see what they take for the final round. So we've had a couple of people not taking the Cooper T79, which is new to the car set. McLaren has been a very unpopular choice, and along with the BRM, and I wonder why. So remember, drivers do have to take different cars for every single round. So what are they going to take for the short circuit at Watkins Glen? So join us in a week at about 19:45 UTC +1 for what is going to be an outstanding Grand Prix to finish off this series. Short circuit, fast cars, what's not to like. So if you like what this broadcast you saw, give it a like, maybe give us a subscribe, and join us next week for some more racing action. I have been your host, Neil Wood. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.